The sun beat down on the scarlet mesa, baking the earth into a cracked canvas of rust and ochre. A lone rider, dust-cloaked and weary, urged his horse forward, the only sound the rhythmic thud of hooves and the whisper of the wind. He was Marshal Silas, Iron Will Blackwood, a man etched by the unforgiving landscape, his gaze as sharp as a hawk's, his reputation a legend whispered around campfires. But even Silas, a man who had stared down outlaws and tamed wild towns, couldn't foresee the storm brewing on the horizon, a storm that would pit him against his deepest convictions and force him to choose between justice and a debt of blood. A wounded Apache, a desperate choice, and a secret that would shatter everything he knew. The Scarlet Mesa was about to demand its pound of flesh. The air in Blackwood Gulch hung heavy with the scent of pine and stale whiskey. Silas Blackwood, a man carved from granite and tempered by the unforgiving frontier, sat in his office, the only adornment a chipped tin star pinned to his vest. He was a man of few words, his thoughts as deep and winding as the canyons he patrolled. Today, however, his usual stoicism was frayed. A telegram, creased and smudged, lay on his desk. It spoke of a fresh wave of raids, not by the usual desperados, but by a band of Apache warriors hitting isolated ranches along the Scarlet Mesa. Silas knew the Scarlet Mesa. He'd ridden its unforgiving trails for years, tracked countless fugitives through its arroyos and canyons. It was a land of harsh beauty, where survival was a daily struggle, and grudges ran as deep as the Gila River. The Apache under their fierce war chief Cochise were a force to be reckoned with. But these raids, they felt different, more desperate, less strategic. He rose the floorboards, creaking under his worn boots, and walked to the window. The setting sun painted the sky in streaks of fiery orange and deep violet, casting long skeletal shadows across the dusty street. The town was quiet, the usual evening clamor muted by an unspoken apprehension. Everyone felt it, the tightening noose of conflict, the inevitable clash between two worlds. Silas wasn't a man to jump to conclusions, but he'd heard whispers, seen signs. The settlers hungry for land encroached further and further onto Apache hunting grounds, and the government, in its infinite wisdom, seemed to operate on a policy of broken promises and forced removals. It was a powder keg, and someone somewhere was about to light the fuse. He spent the next few days in the saddle, his deputies, a quiet but dependable man named Jebediah Jeb Stone, and a younger, eager but still green hand, Caleb Cale Finch, riding alongside him. They scouted the edges of the Scarlet Mesa, following faint tracks, examining abandoned campsites. The signs were clear, the Apache were on the move, and they were desperate. One sweltering afternoon, they stumbled upon something unexpected. Deep in a secluded canyon, near a hidden spring, they found a small makeshift camp. But this wasn't a raiding party's temporary stop. It was a place of ritual, of healing. A crude lean-to had been erected, and the air hummed with the scent of burning herbs. As they approached cautiously, weapons drawn, a figure emerged from the lean-to. It was a woman, her face a canvas of strength and sorrow, her long dark hair braided with feathers. She wore traditional Apache buckskins, her gaze unwavering as it met Silas's. This was no ordinary Apache woman. Her bearing spoke of a lineage, a quiet authority. Her name, as Silas would soon learn, was Nyakah Willow Daughter, and she was a healer, a spiritual guide for her people. Behind her, inside the lean-to, a groan escaped. Silas moved forward, his eyes scanning for danger, but Nyakah made no hostile move. She simply stood her ground, her silence more commanding than any shout. Inside, bathed in the soft glow of a flickering fire, lay a man. His chest was heavily bandaged crimson, seeping through the crude cloth. His breathing was shallow, his face pale beneath the bronzed skin. He was a warrior, no doubt, but one brought low by a grievous wound. Silas recognized him. He'd seen his face on wanted posters, albeit crudely drawn. This was Nacho Wolfbrother, a respected Apache warrior, known for his cunning and his fierce loyalty to Cochise. And now he was dying. "He needs a proper doctor," Silas stated, his voice a low rumble. Nyakar shook her head slowly. "He trusts no white man's medicine." Her voice was soft, melodic, yet imbued with a steel that surprised Silas. "He is one of us. Our ways are his ways." Silas saw the truth in her eyes. Nacho would rather die than be treated by a white man. It was a testament to the deep-seated mistrust that festered between their peoples, a wound far older and deeper than the one in Nacho's chest. But something about Nyakar's unwavering gaze, her quiet dignity, made Silas pause. He wasn't a man prone to sentimentality, but he recognized a desperate plea when he saw one. "We cannot leave him to die." Silas said more to himself than to Nyakar. Jebediah and Cale exchanged uneasy glances. They were lawmen, not angels of mercy, especially not to a man who had likely participated in raids against their own kind. Nyakar took a step closer. "He is wounded, not a captive. We ask for safe passage to our people. He is too weak to travel further now." Silas considered her words. Taking Nacho back to Blackwood Gulch would be a death sentence, either by the gallows or by the resentful hand of a settler whose family had suffered from the raids. Leaving him here alone with Nyakar felt wrong, a dereliction of his duty as a lawman. Yet there was an instinct, a quiet voice within him that urged caution, not confrontation. "Where are your people?" Silas asked, his eyes still on the wounded warrior. Nyakar gestured vaguely towards the distant mountains. "North, beyond the mesa." A long and treacherous journey, especially for a gravely wounded man. Silas made a decision, one that would ripple through his life and the lives of those around him. "We will not interfere with your healing," Silas said, his voice firm. "But we will wait here, until he is strong enough to travel. Then you will take him to your people, and there will be no more raids. A temporary truce, Nyakar. For his sake." Nyakar's eyes, dark and fathomless, searched his. She saw no deception, only a weary resolution. She nodded a silent acknowledgement of the strange pact they had forged. Jebediah and Cale remained silent, their faces unreadable, but Silas knew they questioned his judgment. A truce with a raiding Apache. It was unheard of. But Silas in his core believed in a different kind of justice, one that sometimes transcended the letter of the law. The days that followed were a testament to the strange truce forged in the canyon. Silas, Jeb, and Cale set up a respectful distance from Nyakar's camp, their rifles always within reach, their senses alert. Yet no shots were fired, no hostile words exchanged. A silent understanding, fragile yet potent, hung in the hot canyon air. Nyakar worked tirelessly, her hands deft and gentle as she tended to Nacho. She brewed concoctions from desert herbs, chanted ancient prayers, and constantly changed the crude bandages. Silas watched her, fascinated by the quiet intensity of her devotion. He'd seen plenty of healers in his time, but Nyakar possessed a profound connection to the land, a spiritual power that transcended modern medicine. Nacho remained on the precipice, his life hanging by a thread. His breathing was often ragged, his body racked with fever. Silas found himself against his will, rooting for the Apache warrior. He was an opponent, yes, but a man nonetheless fighting for his life. And Nyakar, in her unwavering care, embodied a humanity that transcended the brutal realities of their conflict. One evening, As the stars began to prick the inky canvas of the sky, Silas found himself drawn to Niakar's small fire. She sat alone, staring into the flickering flames, her face illuminated by their warm glow. He approached cautiously, his boots crunching softly on the loose gravel. "How is he?" Silas asked, his voice low, not wanting to disturb the fragile peace. Niakar looked up, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "He fights. His spirit is strong, but his body is weary." Silas nodded. He understood that kind of fight. He'd fought his own battles against outlaws, against the elements, and sometimes against himself. "Why do you risk so much for him?" Silas asked, curious. Niakar paused, her gaze returning to the fire. "He is my brother, not by blood, but by spirit. He is a protector of our people, and he walks a hard path. We do not abandon our own." Her words resonated with Silas. He understood loyalty, duty, sacrifice. He had chosen the badge, the path of upholding the law to protect his own. The differences between their worlds, though vast, seemed to shrink in the shared space of human connection. "The raids," Silas ventured. "They must stop." Niakar's jaw tightened. "Our people are hungry, Marshal. The white man takes our land, drives away the game. Our children cry for food. What would you do if your family starved?" The question hung in the air, a stark and uncomfortable truth. Silas had no easy answer. He knew the desperation that fueled such acts, had seen it in the eyes of starving settlers and desperate outlaws alike. The lines between right and wrong, between justice and survival, blurred in the harsh light of the frontier. "There must be another way," Silas said, his voice filled with a weariness that went beyond physical fatigue. Niakar sighed a sound, like the wind through dry grass. "There is always another way, Marshal, but both sides must be willing to walk it." Their conversation was brief, yet it laid a subtle foundation. A shared understanding born not of agreement, but of a mutual recognition of the hardships each faced. Silas the lawman and Niakar the healer found a common ground in the silent vigil over a wounded man. The next morning, as the sun climbed above the canyon, rim bathing the world in a golden light, Nacho's fever finally broke. His breathing became steadier, his color slowly returned. He was still weak, but the worst was over. Niakar's tireless efforts, combined with the warrior's own formidable will, had pulled him back from the brink. Silas watched as Niakar carefully helped Nacho to sit up. The Apache warrior's eyes, though still clouded with weakness, held a spark of life. He looked at Silas, a flicker of suspicion in his gaze, but also something else. A grudging respect, perhaps, for the silent observer who had allowed him to heal. The truce was about to be tested. Nacho, though still gaunt and pale, was strong enough to travel. The journey was slow, painstaking, but Niakar guided him with unwavering care, her quiet strength a constant support. Silas and his deputies rode a respectful distance behind, ensuring their safe passage as per their agreement. As they neared the edge of the Scarlet Mesa, where the land began to roll into the vast open plains, Niakar stopped. Nacho dismounted, leaning heavily on her. He turned to face Silas, his gaze steady, devoid of the hostility Silas had come to expect from Apache warriors. "You honored your word, Marshal." Nacho said, his voice raspy but clear. "We do not forget such things." Silas nodded. "And you, warrior, will honor yours. No more raids on the settlers." Nacho's eyes darkened slightly. "Our people are suffering. The promises made to us are broken. The land that nourishes us is taken." "I understand your plight," Silas said, his voice firm but not accusatory. "But violence only begets more violence. It will not solve your hunger. It will only bring more sorrow." Nacho was silent for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the vast, undulating landscape that was once solely his people's. "There is a proposal," he finally said, "from Cochise. If the white man truly seeks peace, he must come to us. Not with guns, but with open hands and honest words." Silas was surprised. Cochise, the legendary war chief known for his fierce resistance, was offering a parley it was almost unheard of. But then again, the desperate circumstances of his people, the threat of starvation, weighed heavily on even the most formidable warrior. "What are the terms?" Silas asked, wary. "Cochise will meet with a representative of your government," Nacho explained. "In the heart of our territory, unarmed, one man. He will listen. He will speak. But he will not be betrayed." The last words were a stark warning. The history of treaties and broken promises between the white man and the Apache was a long and bloody one. Betrayal was a wound that festered, never truly healing. Silas considered the offer. It was a risk, a monumental one. Entering Apache territory alone, unarmed to meet with Cochise. It was a gamble that could cost him his life. But it was also an opportunity, perhaps the only one to avert a full-scale war, a war that would consume both sides in a maelstrom of blood and despair. "I will take your message," Silas said, "but I cannot promise they will agree." Nacho simply nodded. He understood the complexities of the white man's world, just as Silas was beginning to understand the complexities of his. Marshal Blackwood, Nacho said, a glint of something almost like admiration in his eyes. "You are different. We will remember this." With that, Nyakar and Nacho turned, disappearing into the vastness of the plains, leaving Silas and his deputies alone in the dust and silence. Silas returned to Blackwood Gulch with the weight of the frontier on his shoulders. He immediately sent a telegram to the territorial governor, a pompous, self-important man named Governor Josiah Albright, known more for his eloquent speeches than his actual understanding of the frontier. Silas knew Albright would balk at the idea of sending an unarmed representative into Apache territory. He was a man of rhetoric, not courage. True to form, Albright's response was swift and dismissive. He called Cochise's offer a savage trick, a ploy to lure a government official into an ambush. He demanded Silas intensify his efforts to track down the Apache raiders and bring them to justice. He even threatened to send in the cavalry, a move Silas knew would be catastrophic, igniting a war that would consume the entire territory. Silas clenched his jaw. He knew Albright was wrong, knew that Cochise's offer, desperate as it was genuine. The governor, blinded by prejudice and fear, was leading them down a path of destruction. It was then that an unexpected hand reached out. A letter arrived, delivered by a dusty rider from a distant town. It was from Judge Elias Thorne, a circuit judge who held a deep respect for Silas and a reputation for fairness even towards the native peoples. Judge Thorne, unlike Governor Albright, understood the delicate balance of the frontier. The letter was brief, but its contents resonated deeply with Silas. Thorne had heard whispers of the increased Apache activity, of the escalating tensions. He had also heard of Silas's reputation, of his ability to navigate the treacherous waters between justice and compassion. "Marshal," the letter read in Thorne's elegant script, "I understand the governor's concerns, but I also understand the desperate cries of a people pushed to the brink. I have quietly investigated the recent incidents. It seems the raids are indeed driven by hunger, not malice. There are whispers, too, of a corrupt Indian agent, a man named Sterling Vance, who has been diverting supplies meant for the Apache. If this is true, it is a grave injustice and a direct cause of the current unrest." Silas's blood ran cold. Sterling Vance, the name was familiar. A slick, well-dressed man who frequented the saloons in larger towns, always with a pocketful of money, always with a glib smile. Silas had always felt an unsettling aura about Vance, a subtle scent of deceit. Now it all clicked into place. Vance, with his connections, his charm and his greed, could easily be manipulating the system, enriching himself, while the Apache starved. Judge Thorne's letter continued. I will travel to Blackwood Gulch. We will discuss a course of action. I believe Cochise's offer must be seriously considered. Perhaps, Marshal, you are the man to answer that call. Your reputation, your fairness, it might be the only thing that could bridge this chasm. Silas stared at the letter, a surge of grim determination filling him. An unseen hand, guided by a man of integrity, was reaching out. The fate of the Scarlet Mesa, and perhaps even the territory now rested on a bold and dangerous gamble. He would meet with Judge Thorne, and he would, if necessary, defy the governor to do what he believed was right. The stage was set for a confrontation, not just with a war chief, but with the very system he was sworn to uphold. Judge Elias Thorne arrived in Blackwood Gulch a week later, a man of quiet authority, his silver hair and neatly trimmed beard belying the sharp mind beneath. He was a beacon of reason in a territory often consumed by prejudice and fear. Silas met him at the stagecoach, a silent understanding passing between them. They spent hours in Silas's office, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the dusty air. Silas recounted his encounter with Nyakar and Nacho, the strange truce, and Cochise's unexpected offer of parley. Judge Thorne listened intently, his expression thoughtful, occasionally stroking his beard. Sterling Vance. Judge Thorne stated, his voice, devoid of emotion, is a snake. I have had my suspicions for some time. There have been complaints, unverified until now, of missing supplies of funds vanishing into thin air. So the raids, Silas said, are a direct consequence of his greed. Precisely, Thorne confirmed. He starves them, then profits from the resulting chaos. He likely has connections too, perhaps even within the governor's office, to keep his activities hidden. The revelation stoked a cold anger within Silas. He had always believed in justice, in the clear delineation of right and wrong. But this was a different kind of evil, an insidious corruption that thrived in the shadows, destroying lives for personal gain. Cochise's offer, Silas continued. It's our only chance to prevent a full-scale war. But the governor, he will never agree to send an official unarmed into Apache territory. Judge Thorne's gaze met Silas's, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, Marshal, perhaps an unofficial emissary is required. A man of integrity, a man respected by both sides, even if grudgingly. A man who understands the nuances of the frontier, not just the black and white of the law. Silas knew what Thorne was implying. The risk was immense, the potential consequences dire. If he went defying the governor, he would be risking his badge, his reputation, and his life. But if he didn't, a bloodbath was inevitable. I will go, Silas said, his voice firm, unwavering. He would not stand by and watch the Scarlet Mesa erupt in violence, not when a glimmer of hope, however faint, existed. Judge Thorne nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. I will provide you with a letter, an unofficial authorization, stating you are acting on my behalf to investigate the claims of corruption and to seek a peaceful resolution. It will give you some leverage, should you need it. Silas prepared for the journey with a quiet resolve. He left Jebediah in charge of Blackwood Gulch with strict instructions to maintain order and to be discreet about his mission. Cale, still young, was left to assist Jebediah. Silas knew this was a journey he had to undertake, alone. He rode out at dawn, the crisp morning air biting at his face. His pack was light, containing only essentials, and his single revolver, a Colt Peacemaker, was holstered, a silent companion. He was not going to fight, but he was not entirely foolish either. The journey into Apache territory was grueling. The terrain grew harsher, the canyons deeper, the silence more profound. Silas, a man intimately familiar with the frontier, still found himself marveling at the raw, untamed beauty of the land, a land the Apache called home, a land they would fight to the death to protect. He found Cochise's camp nestled deep within a series of hidden valleys, a natural fortress against intruders. Smoke rose from scattered fires, the scent of roasting meat wafting on the wind. As he rode closer, Apache warriors, their faces painted their rifles, held loosely emerged from the shadows surrounding him. Silas dismounted slowly. His hands held open a gesture of peace. Nacho, surprisingly, was among them, his wound clearly healing, though he still favored his side. He approached Silas, his gaze steady. "You came, Marshal." Nacho said, a hint of respect in his voice. "I seek peace, warrior." Silas replied, his voice clear and strong. "And justice. Your people are suffering. I believe I know why." Nacho led Silas into the heart of the camp, where Cochise sat before a large fire, surrounded by his most trusted warriors. Cochise was a formidable figure, his face etched with wisdom and the hardships of war, his eyes sharp and intelligent. He acknowledged Silas with a silent nod, his gaze piercing. Silas, armed only with Thorn's letter and his own conviction, laid out his proposal. He spoke of Sterling Vance, of the stolen supplies, of the deliberate starvation of the Apache. He offered a solution: Vance would be apprehended, the stolen supplies recovered, and a new, honest Indian agent would be appointed. In return, the raids would cease, and a lasting peace would be sought. Cochise listened, his expression unreadable, occasionally exchanging glances with his warriors. When Silas finished, a heavy silence descended upon the camp. The fate of the Scarlet Mesa hung in the balance. Finally, Cochise spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "We have heard these promises before, Marshal. They are like the wind. They blow but leave nothing behind." "I am not the white men who have come before," Silas countered, his voice firm. "I am a lawman, and I seek true justice for all people. I swear to you, Cochise, I will bring Sterling Vance to account, and your people will no longer starve." Cochise studied Silas for a long moment, his gaze searching. He saw the honesty in Silas's eyes, the unwavering determination. He had faced many white men, but none like Silas Blackwood. "There is a condition," Cochise said. "If your words are true, you bring Vance to us. We will judge him by our laws, and if he is found guilty, his punishment will be ours to decide." Silas felt a tremor of unease, handing a white man over to Apache. Justice, even a corrupt one, was a dangerous precedent. It could be seen as an act of betrayal by his own people. But he knew, too, that the Apache had suffered countless injustices, and their demand for retribution was understandable. He thought of the starving children of Nearkar's quiet desperation. He thought of the war that would inevitably erupt if he refused. He thought of Judge Thorn's belief in a different kind of justice. "Agreed," Silas said, his voice ringing with a conviction he hadn't known he possessed. "I will bring Sterling Vance. If he is guilty, he is yours." A murmur went through the Apache warriors. Nacho looked at Silas, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, followed by a nod of approval. Cochise, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, extended his hand. Silas grasped it, sealing a pact that would forever bind his fate to the Apache and to the wild, unforgiving land of the Scarlet Mesa. But as Silas rode out of the Apache camp, a strange twist of fate was already unfolding, a secret that would shatter the fragile peace he had just forged and bring a new, even more profound drama to his doorstep. The unseen hand of destiny was not done, playing its cards. Silas rode back to Blackwood Gulch with a singular purpose to find Sterling Vance. He was no longer just a lawman seeking an outlaw. He was an avenger, a man fulfilling a sacred trust. The thought of Vance's insidious corruption, his willingness to let an entire people starve for his own gain, fueled a cold fire in Silas's gut. Upon his return, Silas found Judge Thorne still in Blackwood Gulch, patiently awaiting his report. When Silas recounted the agreement with Cochise of bringing Vance to Apache justice, Thorne's brow furrowed, but he ultimately nodded. "A bold move, Marshal," Thorne conceded. "Dangerous, but perhaps necessary. Justice in this land sometimes takes unconventional forms." The hunt for Sterling Vance began immediately. Silas, with Jebediah and Cale, started by tracing Vance's known associates, his usual haunts. Vance was a slippery character, a man who moved through the shadows, always with an ear to the ground. He was rarely in one place for long. Their investigation led them from one dusty outpost to another, from the smoky back rooms of saloons to the quiet, sun-drenched offices of land speculators. Each lead, however small, brought them closer. They learned that Vance had a penchant for card games, a weakness for fine whiskey, and a habit of leaving behind a trail of angry, cheated men. One sweltering afternoon, after weeks of relentless searching, they caught a break. A grizzled prospector, nursing a warm beer in a dilapidated saloon in the desolate town of Rattlesnake Gulch, recognized Vance from a crude sketch Silas carried. "I saw him just a few days back," the prospector rasped, spitting tobacco juice into a nearby cuspidor, heading south towards the Red River. "Said he was going to meet some investors at the old Black Bear mine. Always got his nose in some shady deal, that one." The Black Bear mine was an abandoned silver mine, rumored to be haunted, nestled deep in a secluded canyon, known for its treacherous trails and rattlesnake-infested caves. It was a perfect hideout for a man like Vance, a place where he could conduct his illicit dealings far from prying eyes. Silas felt a grim satisfaction. The chase was nearing its end. The journey to the Black Bear mine was arduous. The sun beat down relentlessly, the terrain unforgiving. They rode for 2 days, pushing their horses to their limits, fueled by a grim determination. As they neared the mine, Silas's instincts, honed by years on the frontier, told him they were close. They approached the mine, cautiously dismounting, a good distance away, leaving their horses tethered in a hidden thicket. Silas, Jebediah, and Cale moved like shadows, their rifles at the ready, their senses alert. The air around the mine was still heavy with an eerie silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant cry of a hawk. As they neared the mine entrance, a faint flicker of light emanated from within. Muffled voices, low and conspiratorial, drifted on the wind. Vance was here. Silas motioned for Jebediah and Cale to take positions covering the main entrance. He himself, a master of stealth, would enter through a less obvious route, a narrow, overgrown tunnel he knew of from his earlier days of prospecting. The tunnel was dark, damp, and claustrophobic. Silas moved slowly, his hand brushing against the cold, damp rock, his senses heightened. He could hear the faint murmur of voices growing louder. He emerged into a large cavern, lit by a single, flickering lantern. And there he was. Sterling Vance. He was seated at a makeshift table, surrounded by 3 burly, unsavory-looking men, their faces etched with greed and suspicion. Spread out on the table were maps, documents, and a small, overflowing bag of gold coins. Vance, ever the slick operator, was charming his companions. His glib smile fixed in place, his hands gesturing expansively. "Gentlemen," Vance was saying, his voice oily smooth. "This land, once the pesky Apache are removed, will be ours for the taking. Rich in silver, ripe for exploitation. A true gold mine, if you will." Silas felt a surge of cold fury. This man, so casual in his disregard for human life, so brazen in his corruption. He stepped out of the shadows, his Colt peacemaker drawn, its cold steel gleaming in the lantern light. "Sterling Vance," Silas's voice echoed in the cavern, deep and resonant. "Your dealings are over." Vance's head snapped up, his glib smile vanishing, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated fear. His eyes, usually shifty, were now wide with panic. His companions, startled, instinctively reached for their own weapons. "Marshal Blackwood," Vance stammered, his voice suddenly devoid of its usual charm. What is the meaning of this?" "The meaning?" "Vance," Silas replied, his voice a steel trap, "is justice. You have starved a people, exploited their misery, and brought this territory to the brink of war, and now you will answer for it." One of Vance's companions, a hulking brute with a scarred face, made a move for his pistol. Silas, moving with the speed of a coiled spring, fired. The shot cracked through the cavern, echoing loudly. The man clutched his shoulder, howling in pain, his pistol clattering to the ground. The other two men, seeing Silas's deadly precision and the unwavering resolve in his eyes, hesitated. Vance, trembling, raised his hands in surrender. "Don't shoot, Marshal. I'll cooperate." He pleaded, his voice a whimper. Just then, Jebediah and Cale burst into the cavern, their rifles aimed, effectively cutting off any escape. Vance's remaining companions, seeing the odds stacked against them, reluctantly threw down their weapons. Silas approached Vance, his gaze like a branding iron. "You are under arrest, Vance, and you're going to face a different kind of justice than you're used to." Vance's eyes widened further, a dawning horror spreading across his face as he realized the true implications of Silas's words. He knew of the Apache, of their unforgiving nature, of the fate that awaited those who wronged them. No, Marshal, please," Vance stammered, desperate. "Not the Apache. I can pay you anything you want." Silas simply looked at him, his face a mask of grim determination. "Your greed, Vance, has earned you this, and no amount of money can buy your way out of it now." They bound Vance and his accomplices, then began the long, arduous journey back to the Apache territory. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in fiery hues as they rode out of the Black Bear mine. Silas felt a sense of grim satisfaction. He had kept his word. The first step towards a fragile peace had been taken. But the Scarlet Mesa was a land of constant surprises, and a new, unexpected drama was about to unfold, one that would challenge Silas's very understanding of truth, loyalty, and the intricate web of human connections. The unseen hand, it seemed, had one more truly devastating twist left to play. The journey back to Apache territory with Vance and his men was slow and fraught with tension. Vance, constantly pleading, bargaining, and threatening, tested Silas's patience to its limits. His captors remained silent, grim-faced, understanding the gravity of their situation. As they neared Cochise' camp, the sight of Apache scouts, their faces painted, their rifles held high, brought a fresh wave of terror to Vance's eyes. He knew his fate was sealed. Silas led the small procession into the heart of the camp, where Cochise and his warriors awaited. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the crackle of the central fire. Vance, trembling, was brought before Cochise, who regarded him with an impassive yet menacing stare. Silas, standing beside Vance, recounted his findings, detailing Vance's corruption, the stolen supplies, and the resulting suffering of the Apache people. He spoke with unwavering conviction, presenting the evidence he had gathered. Judge Thorne's unofficial letter of authorization was given to Cochise, who, after a moment's inspection, nodded, acknowledging the unusual but respected gesture. Cochise, after hearing Silas's account, turned his gaze to Vance. "You have starved my people, white man. Our children cried with hunger while you grew fat on our misery. What do you say to this?" Vance, his bravado completely gone, stammered out a pathetic denial, blaming others, twisting the truth, trying to find any escape from his impending judgment. But his words were hollow, ringing false in the face of the overwhelming evidence and the suffering he had caused. It was Nyakar who stepped forward, her gaze unwavering as she looked at Vance. "He speaks with a forked tongue, Chief. His heart is dark. But there is more to his treachery than even the Marshal knows." All eyes turned to Nyakar, her words hanging in the air, a new layer of intrigue added to the unfolding drama. Silas felt a prickle of unease. What else could there be? Nyakar then turned to Silas, her dark eyes filled with a profound sorrow. "Marshal Blackwood, you have acted with honor. You have sought justice for my people. But I carry a heavy secret, a burden that affects not only my people but also you." Silas felt a chill run down his spine. Her words were cryptic, yet deeply unsettling. "Speak, Willow Daughter," Cochise commanded, his voice grave. Nyakar took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her people, then settling on Vance, who now looked more terrified than ever. "The man you know as Sterling Vance," Nyakar began, her voice low but clear. "He is not who he claims to be. He is an agent, yes, but also a brother. My brother." A collective gasp went through the Apache camp. Silas stared at Nyakar, his mind reeling. Her brother, the corrupt, hateful Vance, was related to this woman of dignity and compassion. It seemed impossible. Vance, his face now ashen, finally broke. "Nyakar, no, don't tell them, please." Nyakar ignored his pleaster, her gaze unwavering. "He was born White Feather, the son of a captive white woman who was taken by a small renegade band of Apache many years ago. She was not a willing captive, but over time she bore a son. When she died, White Feather was raised by the band, but he never truly belonged. He was always drawn to the white man's world, to their ways, to their greed. He left us years ago seeking his fortune among the white men, abandoning his Apache heritage, his mother's memory, everything." She paused, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I was a young girl when he left. I remembered his light hair, his blue eyes so different from our own. He carried a small silver locket, a gift from our mother. I still remember the intricate carving of a soaring eagle on its surface." Silas's gaze snapped to Vance. He remembered the locket. He had seen Vance fidgeting with it on a few occasions, a small silver locket hidden beneath his shirt. He had dismissed it as a trinket, never thinking it held such a profound secret. "He returned to us years later," Nyakar continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Not as White Feather, but as Sterling Vance, the Indian agent. He preyed on our trust, using his knowledge of our ways to manipulate us, to steal from us, to profit from our suffering. He became the very thing our mother despised, a betrayer, a heart of darkness." The revelation hung heavy in the air, a shocking twist that reverberated through the camp. Vance, the man who had starved them, was one of them at least by birth. It was a betrayal far deeper, far more insidious than anyone had imagined. Cochise, his face grim, looked at Vance, a flicker of disgust in his eyes. "You shame your mother, White Feather. You shame all who walk the path of the Apache. You chose the path of the wolf, preying on your own." Vance, broken and exposed, could only hang his head, his face a picture of utter despair. His carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the rotten core beneath. Silas, though shocked by the revelation, felt a strange sense of clarity. The complexity of the human heart, the capacity for both good and evil, was laid bare before him. Nyakar, in her courage and honesty, had revealed a truth that transcended the simple narrative of white versus Apache. It was a story of a lost soul, a twisted path, and the devastating consequences of choosing greed over family, over humanity. The weight of the situation pressed down on Silas. He had promised to deliver Vance for Apache justice. Now he was delivering a man who was in a twisted way part of their own. How would Cochise respond to this profound betrayal, and what would it mean for the fragile peace they had just forged? The Scarlet Mesa had revealed another of its cruel, beautiful truths, and Silas knew the conclusion to this drama would be far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. The revelation of Sterling Vance's true identity, of his betrayal as White Feather, sent shockwaves through the Apache camp. The warriors' faces, usually stoic, were etched with a mixture of anger and a deep, profound sorrow. The betrayal from within was always the most painful. Cochise, his gaze heavy with the weight of this new knowledge, stared at Vance for a long moment, then slowly turned to Silas. "You brought us a man who harmed us greatly, Marshal. But you also brought us a man who once carried our blood, albeit a corrupted one. Our laws are clear on treachery. But this is a different kind of wound." Silas understood. The Apache respected justice, but they also valued family, even those who strayed. Nyakar's confession, a testament to her courage, and her unwavering commitment to truth, had complicated everything. He must answer for his crimes, Silas stated, his voice firm. But how you judge him, Cochise, is now in your hands. Cochise remained silent for a long time, his eyes fixed on the flickering flames of the fire, as if seeking guidance from the ancient spirits. The weight of his decision was immense. To treat Vance as any other white man would be to ignore his origins, to deny the deeper betrayal. To treat him as an Apache would be to acknowledge the shame he brought upon their people. Finally, Cochise raised his head, his gaze sweeping across his assembled warriors, then to Nyakar, and finally to Silas. "He will not die by our hand," Cochise declared, his voice resonating with authority. "To spill the blood of one who carried our blood, no matter how corrupted, would bring a stain upon our people. Instead, his punishment will be to live with the knowledge of his betrayal, stripped of all that he sought to gain. He will be banished from our lands, from our sight forever. If he ever returns, then the fate of a common thief will be his." A murmur of agreement went through the warriors. It was a harsh sentence, perhaps more cruel than a quick death. Vance would be forced to live with his guilt, with the knowledge of what he had become, exiled from both worlds. Cochise then turned to Silas. "You, Marshal Blackwood, have honored your word. You have brought us justice, and you have shown respect for our ways. The raids will cease. We will seek a new path, a path of peace, if the white man is truly willing to walk it." A wave of relief washed over Silas. The immediate threat of war had been averted. A fragile peace, born out of an unlikely alliance, had taken root. "There is something else." Cochise continued, his gaze falling upon Nyakar, then back to Silas. "Nyakar, in her honesty, has placed a debt upon you, Marshal." Silas raised an eyebrow, a question in his eyes. She revealed a truth that was difficult, dangerous even for her people to hear, Cochise explained. She risked much to uphold justice, to reveal the full extent of this man's treachery. She is a woman of great spirit, a healer and a guide for our people. Her actions have earned her, and by extension her people, a debt from you, Marshal Blackwood. An unspoken debt for a truth revealed. Silas understood. He had unknowingly become entangled in a deeper web of relationships, of unspoken obligations. Nyakar's courage, her sacrifice, had created a bond that transcended the simple exchange of an outlaw. Cochise then turned to Nyakar. "Willow daughter, your brother has chosen his path. He is no longer one of us. But you have upheld the spirit of our people. You will continue to guide and heal, and now you will guide us towards this new peace alongside the Marshal." Nyakar looked at Silas, her dark eyes, usually so serious now, holding a flicker of something new, a quiet understanding, a shared burden, perhaps even a nascent respect. The following day, Vance, stripped of his fine clothes, his pockets emptied, was led to the edge of the Apache territory. He was given a single horse, a meager supply of food and water, and sent into the vast, unforgiving wilderness, banished forever. His accomplices, after being stripped of their ill-gotten gains and given a stern warning, were also sent packing, fortunate to escape with their lives. Silas watched him go, a profound sense of closure, yet also a lingering sadness settling over him. Vance was a casualty of the frontier, a man who had chosen the path of darkness, and now reaped the bitter harvest of his choices. The journey back to Blackwood Gulch was different this time. Silas rode alongside Nyakar, who now, with Cochise's blessing, would act as a liaison between her people and the white settlers working towards building a lasting peace. Their conversations were sparse, yet meaningful. They spoke of the land, of the challenges, of the hopes for a better future. Silas, the stoic lawman, found himself opening up to Nyakar in ways he never had before, sharing his concerns, his beliefs, his quiet hopes. He saw in her not just an Apache woman, but a kindred spirit, a person who, despite their vastly different worlds, shared a common purpose to bring order and a measure of justice to the wild, untamed frontier. The Scarlet Mesa, once a battleground of conflict, was slowly, tentatively becoming a place of uneasy truce, a testament to the courage of a few individuals who dared to seek a different path. But the story of the wounded Apache and the Marshal was not yet complete. A final, deeply personal twist awaited Silas Blackwood, a twist that would challenge his very core and reveal a secret buried deep in his own past. The unspoken debt, it seemed, was about to be called in a way he could never have foreseen. The return to Blackwood Gulch with Nyakar was met with a mix of suspicion and cautious optimism. Judge Thorne, ever the diplomat, had begun to lay the groundwork for a more just relationship with the Apache, and Nyakar, with her quiet dignity and wisdom, quickly earned the respect of those willing to listen. The raids had indeed ceased, and a fragile peace settled over the Scarlet Mesa. Silas, however, found his personal life unexpectedly intertwined with the aftermath of his mission. Nyakar, due to the delicate nature of her role as liaison, needed a safe and respectable place to stay while working with the white authorities. Judge Thorne had suggested the Marshal's own house, a decision that, while practical, caused a stir in the small conservative town. Silas, a bachelor who lived a solitary life, found his quiet home suddenly filled with the quiet presence of Nyakar. He offered her the spare room, a small, sparsely furnished space at the back of the house. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and discussions with various officials, a weary Nyakar returned to Silas's house. She was visibly tired, her shoulders slumped, the weight of her responsibilities heavy upon her. Silas, observing her from his armchair by the crackling fireplace, felt an unexpected pang of concern. "You look exhausted, Nyakar," he said, his voice softer than usual. "The white man's world, it takes a toll." Nyakar managed a faint smile. "It is a different kind of fight, Marshal, but a necessary one." She then looked at him, her gaze direct, unwavering. "I am grateful for your hospitality, Marshal. You have honored your word to Koshise and to me. But there is something more. Silas raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. Nyakar hesitated, then continued, her voice lower, a hint of vulnerability in her tone. My people, we are taught to pay our debts, the unspoken debt, Marshal. You allowed Nacho to heal. You sought justice for my people. You brought them truth. And in return, my people bestowed upon you a sacred trust, a personal debt. You need comfort, Marshal, not just for your body, but for your spirit. Silas stared at her, unsure where this was leading. His spirit. He was a lawman, a man of duty, not of emotional comforts. Nyakar took a step closer, her gaze intense. My people often say, you can sleep on the porch or in my bed. The porch is for strangers, for those who seek only a temporary shelter. The bed, that is for those with whom you share a deeper connection, a bond of trust, of shared purpose, even of unspoken needs. Silas's breath hitched. He understood. This was not a proposition of fleeting passion, but an offer of profound intimacy, a recognition of the connection that had formed between them through shared trials and mutual respect. It was a testament to the Apache way, a merging of physical and spiritual comfort as a form of deep gratitude and kinship. He was a man who had lived his life alone, shielded by his badge and his stoicism. He had always kept a careful distance from personal entanglements, believing it would compromise his ability to dispense justice impartially. But Nyakar, with her quiet strength and her profound wisdom, had seen past his facade into the weary soul beneath. He thought of the long nights on the trail, the countless battles fought, the loneliness that was a constant companion. He thought of Nyakar's unwavering courage, her compassion, her unyielding spirit. He thought of the fragile peace they had forged, the hope for a better future, a future built on understanding and respect. He looked into her eyes, seeing not just a woman, but a symbol of the land of resilience, of a deep, abiding connection to life itself. He saw the scars of her people, but also their enduring spirit. The Keshes are dead, Silas said, his voice a low rumble, choosing the one with his arms. It was not a decision of fleeting desire, but of profound recognition. He chose the warmth or the shared solace, the unspoken comfort that Nyakar offered. He chose to acknowledge the deeper connection, the bond that had formed between them, transcending their separate worlds. He chose to accept the comfort of a kindred spirit, a silent acknowledgement of the weary heart beneath the badge. Nyakar's lips curved into a gentle, knowing smile. She walked towards him, her movements fluid and graceful, and placed her hand on his, a touch that was both gentle and firm. In that moment, in the quiet warmth of the Marshal's house, amidst the fading echoes of a brutal frontier, a new chapter began, one not of conflict, but of connection, of healing, and of an unexpected profound love that blossomed in the heart of the Scarlet Mesa. The Scarlet Mesa, once a symbol of division and conflict, slowly transformed into a testament to the power of understanding, of bridging worlds, and of finding common ground in the most unlikely of places. Silas Blackwood, the stoic marshal, found not just peace for the land he protected, but also a profound and unexpected peace within himself, in the arms of a woman who had seen his wounds and offered him solace beyond the porch in the warmth of her understanding heart. The tale of Marshal Silas Blackwood and Nyakar, the Willow Daughter, is more than just a Wild West drama. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit, a beacon of hope in a time of conflict. It reminds us that even in the harshest landscapes where prejudices run deep and justice seems elusive, common ground can be found and unlikely alliances can bloom into profound connections. their story born of a wounded warrior, a desperate plea, and an extraordinary choice carved a path towards peace on the Scarlet Mesa. It's a story that challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to seek the hidden truths, and to recognize the humanity in every soul regardless of their background. If this journey through the rugged beauty and poignant drama of the Scarlet Mesa has stirred something within you, if it has opened your eyes to the power of compassion and the pursuit of true justice, then join us on this adventure. Share this video with those who appreciate stories of courage and connection. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales from the untamed frontier. Stories that remind us of the enduring spirit of the American West and the timeless lessons it holds. The Scarlet Mesa may be quiet now, but its whispers of redemption will echo for generations to come.